Hey, and welcome to another episode of the podcast brought to you by me, Simon Mitchell of IamParadiseFitness.com. Great to have you with me for what is set to be another awesome show with knowledge bombs galore that you can take away and implement into your own programs just as soon as I've stopped talking. Now, before we get into today's topic, I just want to quickly tell you about where you can go to get more free information and resources related to training and nutrition. I want to help you take your progress to the next level. So here's what I've got for you. If it's nutrition you're struggling with, then head over to IamParadiseFitness.com and you can pick up a free copy of my ebook, 7 Steps to Correcting Your Nutrition Plan. In it, I'll guide you through the step-by-step process of calculating how many calories you need, as well as dig into the detail around protein, meal timing, and supplements. And if you want more information on creating training programs that are truly effective, then I highly recommend you download my free guide, How to Create the Ultimate Training Program for Beginners. It covers all you need to know about sets, reps, exercises, and a whole lot more. But for now, let's dive straight into today's episode. On today's episode of the podcast, we are talking to Mr. Simon Hall, who has helped countless people transform not just their health and their fitness, but their lives in general through his holistic approach to health, fitness, and well-being. So if you're the type of person that's looking to get into health and fitness and looking to make yourself a priority for a change, but you're a little bit confused or you're a little bit unsure about how to incorporate that in your already busy lifestyle, Simon is just the man to help you do that. So I hope you enjoyed this interview. So without further ado, let's talk to Simon. Hey Simon, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on to talk about everything that you do. Great to have you on this episode of the podcast.
I appreciate the invite and for having me on. So thank you, Simon.
No worries, man. So for the listeners that maybe aren't familiar with you and your work and what you do, can you perhaps give us a little bit of a brief overview about your background and kind of how Body Composition, your website, was created and formed?
Yeah, for sure. My actual background was I started off at a very young age, from the age of 3, where I kind of a fun story, really. I fell quite literally into gymnastics. So the story goes, I got a Superman outfit as a young child, and I decided that I could fly and jump down the stairs. So it was from that age, my mum and dad took me to a gymnastic class and said, you need to go and release your energy somewhere. Yeah. So that's how that kind of stuff started, with 2 broken arms. But anyway, from that kind of aspect, I worked my way up to a very high level. Where I actually represented the country. Competed at a very high level. And a fun thing really happened, and it's kind of taught me a lot of lessons moving forwards into probably this interview as well, is that I live quite a restricted life. As you can imagine, so nutrition, training, like hours per week. And anyway, what actually happened when I reached the age of about 15, 16 was I actually watched my grandfather, who I was very close to, pass away from what I found out later could have been something that could have been helped through managing stress, managing balance, eating correctly, and putting it bluntly, just sorting his shit out, really. Yeah. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So after watching my grandfather pass away, one of our coaches at the time actually sat me down and kind of talked me through it and was like, do you know this? If this would have happened, it could have changed the course and the outcome of this. And it was from that where it kind of took the motivation from self into others, where it kind of set me on this journey to go and learn and just help, inspire, and get people to change the ways. Because the biggest thing I've learned, especially in my time in this career, is that the biggest motivator for a lot of people is pain. And people only tend to want to change something when pain slaps them in the face. And that was a similar situation, what happened there. So I kind of set out on this journey to learn as much as I could, go down the health world, go down the business world, mentorship, coaching world, and just kind of gather as much knowledge as I could that could help people change their ways and stop them running into this brick wall. So anyway, I found myself, I presume this is a natural step for most people and most trainers when they fall into the industry, is they go into like the personal training world. I did that, but something just kept burning deeper and deeper in me. Like I have this clear vision of what it looks like, of actually like creating something that's going to help people all over the globe. And for 6 years, I was a personal trainer, and it just ate at me and ate at me and ate at me. And as much as I love helping people, but helping one person per hour, it ruined me. And it got to the point where I was sacrificing so much of my own time. My own health started to slip because I was putting absolutely everything into my own business, trying to help as many people as I could. After about 2 years of things getting really quite intense, and you sat on the fence of hitting burnout and all that sort of stuff, I was just like, no, something's got to change now. So took one of the biggest risks of my life and jumped in, and I was like, right, this is it. This is your time. Let's go stand at the top of a mountain, show what you're about. Let's get online. Let's try and get some media, an audience, and start building up from there. And it's just been a continual process ever since that. And it's kind of been a life process, but it's amazing to see how it's actually falling into place now. And we feel like we're gathering a lot of momentum with actually really helping people change. And I think the biggest thing for me is I just did a story on this over on Instagram, is one of the biggest reasons as well now that I love doing this, and why we've stemmed off into so much more than just your health and your wellness, is because I've always found, and I presume you found this yourself, is whenever someone does come to you in the gym or in the fitness world, or when they want to change something about within themselves, it usually tends to lead on to so much more. So if you want that confidence and self-esteem, it's suddenly then going to lead on to this standards and boundaries elevating, where they want to kind of maybe leave a relationship the way they weren't happy in, or maybe go and leave the job and create this new career or something that they've always dreamed of. And I think for us, it's an important part to play in a fitness industry. I don't really feel like our industry knows the power that we've got in someone's life when it's just actually helping someone change the nutrition. It's just that beginning step of so much more. So that was long.
That's cool, because I think I 100% agree, is that when I first started out, so I was trying to help people, and obviously as a guy getting first into training and nutrition, I came at it from a perspective of, I just really loved training, and I really loved the ability to change your body and all of that sort of stuff, and have that was my sort of self-confidence, being able to go from fat kid at school to kind of like a guy that other people admired. That was like real sign of self-confidence for me. I wanted to help other people achieve that. But as soon as you, I think, start to delve into it a little bit deeper, you really understand that it's very little about training. It's very little about nutrition. It's all about mindset stuff, and actually, as you say, like sorting out your nutrition, which leads you on to maybe feeling more self-confidence, opens up so many more doors. Okay. And I used to have I kind of had a similar thing where I had a corporate career. So I worked for a sort of big automotive company, sort of very successful career. And then I had that light bulb moment to say that I don't want to be here for 30 years waiting for a retirement check. I've got a burning passion to go and help some people. So I'm going to take a big risk and go do it. So that was a big thing for me. And reflecting back on it, it's difficult when you start to try and get all that stuff going. But then I always reflect back, and I get messages from people to say, you've really changed my life and all of this sort of stuff. And you never get that comment from someone about a spreadsheet or a presentation you did. You never changed someone's life because you did a good Excel formula. No offense to anyone out there who does Excel formulas, but, it's that thing. I think, like you say, is that health and fitness opens up so many doors to other things being improved in general life. So 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I did. I always use the term, I think Moody kind of nailed it. And we were just saying how it's the first permission slip for many to do so much more.
So, 100%. Yeah. Cool. So we kind of touched on it a little bit there. So with your company, you have this sort of multi-dimensional approach to a client. Could you maybe explain a bit more about that and how that's come to fruition, really?
So there's quite a lot of change about to happen, so watch this space.
Okay.
So I'm just going to say that. I can't really delve into that too much. But the multidimensional approach it's like I was trying to say before, it's we soon realized how people want to go and do different things. So what we decided to create was like a whole holistic approach to coaching. So a place where people could come for the health, the wellness, a place where people could come and sort out the health, the wellness, the body, the way they looked, a place where people could actually get the education they needed to go out and create their own business or their own e-commerce businesses, a place where people could develop. So basically it's become a place of self-development. So now we're doing retreats, events all over the world, which is cool, and just helping people in as many core areas as we can. So my first ever mentor mentioned your core four, where you should always be growing in, because if you don't realize that you're growing in, you'll realize that one area is really holding you back. And that was your body health and wellness and fitness. Segment 1. Segment 2 was relationships and connection. Segment 3 was life, adventure, and growth. And section 4 was business, career. So what we kind of facilitate is a space where people can come in and really kind of like grow, amplify, and make big impacts in all of those areas, which is pretty awesome. Which now you might be able to guess what the change is, but
yeah, sounds really exciting. So I think like for today's episode, we want to kind of delve into some of the work you do with these types of people that are like your busy professionals, and maybe sort of discuss some scenarios where maybe you can use your experience and say, you know, this is how you kind of work with clients in this area, and this is kind of some practical advice people can get. And one of those is common issue is time or lack thereof of that time. So I guess like people have busy careers, extremely high priority that takes in their life, and that can be long commutes, long hours in the office. So time is limited. And if you throw family life then into the whole mix, trying to get health and fitness and trying to be healthy and all of that, trying to maybe sort of round out those 4 quadrants can be quite tough. So when you're working with clients, how do you approach that with a new client?
Yeah, so the key thing is everyone's individual, and everyone always has some point of leverage. And the biggest thing for us is actually finding where that person feels comfortable with getting slightly uncomfortable in order to amplify and dig a bit deeper into that leverage point. The big thing for us as well is just making sure what does that person define as well as busy or having no time. So first things first, I always look at what the hierarchy of priority is in someone's life. So first things first, like where do they actually fit in within their own life? I think that's kind of a big, powerful tool, because when people actually realize that they're not the priority within their own life and it's them that's creating everything and they can only go as far as that they can go, then you're in a point where you can change that. So first things first, we do some awareness work. And then what it'd be a case of is then therefore looking at just seeing how confident or how someone feels with making the small changes that they could make. So a lot of the time, people think that to make the changes that they need, maybe to the health, the body, the wellness, that they've got to start going to the gym 4 times a week. They've got to start prepping the food. And that becomes daunting from someone who's doesn't prep the food, eats from a vendor, and doesn't know how many steps they walk and has never been to the gym. So the first thing we do is like look at what little habits we can change. So it might just be first, per day, can you just drink 3-4 liters of water? Do that for a week. As soon as you've got confident, you've seen progress, that now motivates you a little bit more. Can we now change your breakfast for a week? Let's do that. And just building it up slowly. So even though there's only slow little manipulations and little habitual changes throughout the weeks and the months, over an accumulation of 3 months, that person can look back and be like, oh, that's a lot of change. And they're actually making more investments into themselves. They're making progress forwards to what it is that they wanted. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing for us is raising self-awareness, like, because we can all say we're busy, can't we, at the end of the day? And I totally get that. And there's been some positions where I'm like, look, I've got no time to do that. But then it's just working out what you can work with at that given time in that situation.
Yeah. And do you find that how perceptible are people to that approach of change? Because I imagine, I work with a lot of people and have done in the past that, I've mentioned a couple of times that we live in a world where everything happens instantaneously. Whether you want to book a flight, whether you want to, get an Uber or hook up a date on Tinder, everything happens fairly instantaneously, except making changes in health and fitness and other stuff of that nature. So are people wanting results really quickly and you having to kind of rein them in to say, well, actually, we need to walk a little bit slower first?
Yeah, I think might sound a bit woo-woo, I guess. But I think first things first is just making people aware that change happens within. I think that's huge. And I think from what you've just said, a lot of the time we're looking for that change outwards and externally. And that's what we're looking for, is that quick fix. It's like, oh, if I hire this personal trainer, or if I do this online coaching program, or if I go on Tinder or something like that, it'll automatically just work. I'll have an awesome relationship. That's not what happens, because the real work has to come from within. So the biggest thing for us is just making sure that the person's, that's where it all starts. It's, we always do it from this. So if we can change the way that the person's mind, what's that saying? You can't achieve a new form of success with the same old way of thinking. So we always go from this: if we can change a person's thought pattern, the way that they think, believe about themselves and all that sort of stuff, we can then change their emotional state. Once we change their emotions, we're in a much better position to change the habitual pattern. And then from habitual pattern, we can change their actions and then the results. So we always work back from that aspect. And
do you find that your clients are quite receptive to that way of coaching? I know, I've worked, I'm not going to sort of discredit the male form of the species, but they kind of can be very resistant when you talk about mindset and maybe opening up emotionally. And it's more like, just tell me how many sets of reps, dude.
Yeah, well, to be honest, you're always going to get that. There's always going to be something that doesn't necessarily go, but unfortunately, they're usually the people that need to address that stuff the most. Hate saying that, but unfortunately, it's true. So yeah, there's always some, but I think it depends on where you go in and where you actually help that person. Because some people, maybe that's what they need first to get that change, and then they open the mind up. Because a lot of the time sometimes we won't go into all this mind work and thought, but then when people actually see it, and they see themselves changing, then they start to understand the importance of it. So the key thing is just finding out what that individual needs at that given time to at least get some form of forward steps progress, and then really just open it up.
Yeah, so I guess you're looking at the sort of the quadrants that you kind of described and saying, well, where does this person need our attention most? And then as that person develops with you, that opens up the other doors to sort of create other positivity in the rest of their life, I guess.
Totally. I mean, if I flip it back to what I was just saying before about those 4 quadrants, or another exercise we do is the Wheel of Life one, is if you really look at kind of like what are people's true drivers as to why do they come into wanting to change those things? It usually is confidence, health, self-esteem, or something along the lines of that, isn't it? They're usually like the key pains or the happiness trap or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So I think once you kind of go in there, and at the level where they're willing to change, that's when you can then open people up to more. Because you see it a lot. From my own experience, I did photo shoot modeling for a lot of years, and I found myself in a very empty, unfulfilled place. And I thought that would give me everything. The sad thing is, it didn't. I climbed the wrong mountain, looking for validation from something outside of myself, and I never actually got it inside. So I think that's the thing. Is just you've got to make sure that everything you're doing, where you're going, kind of falls in line with how you want to feel and all that sort of stuff. And I think we've kind of disconnected from that quite considerably. So something might look nice, but how does it actually feel?
Yeah, I think I've done that Wheel of Life thing, and it was a massive eye opener for me in the sense that when you're sort of brutally honest with yourself and you look at when I was doing it sort of more recently, it was more a case of I was so focused on business stuff that the friends, the love life was just real far down, and then you kind of say, well, hang on, this is only going to work for so long before one of these pieces starts to affect something else, and then the whole house of cards just kind of going to crumble from there. So not that I've actually sorted some of that stuff out yet, but at least it's an eye-opener and it's there.
I think the beauty of anything like that is once you're aware of something, you're in a position of change. And I think that's the first key points for us as coaches and what we do through our business is just make people aware. Why do you do what you do? Why are you in this position? And then you can start changing it. Because a lot of people aren't aware. So they're just walking around in no man's land, unaware of what needs to happen or what needs to change. When in fact, it could be your health and something might be taking a slip, which now that you've done that Wheel of Life, you might be like, the fire alarm's gone off a little bit. And it's like, oh, I need to kind of put some attention into that. But you wouldn't have realized that without doing that. So
exactly.
It kind of puts you in a position before pain hits you.
Yeah. And typically, let's say, for example, someone comes to you and they've got a particular, maybe they start with a sort of a health and fitness type of goal. So how long kind of typically does it take to create maybe a mindset shift and kind of get that person thinking differently and actually on the right path? I imagine that's completely different for everybody, but
it depends where people are at in their level of the journey. Some people, like you were saying before, are just so switched off to that stuff that they just want the little pieces. They just want the how. How do I do this? I will go away with it. You find that a lot in the business world as well. A lot of your business folk are just in action mode. So it's right, just do this, go.
Yeah.
Whereas some people who are really starting off just can't work or feel really lost with themselves and what they're doing and all that sort of stuff. Just really just need some help and guidance working out who they are, what they want, and all that sort of stuff. And then you can put them in a position to.
Yeah.
It's a very person-dependent thing.
Yeah, and do you find that maybe it's the case that because people are maybe, I think you said at the beginning, is that their focus on themselves isn't there. So maybe there's a big focus on, probably for, with good intentions, on the career being very important so they can provide for their family, lots of focus on doing things for their family, but actually their own health and wellness has been left behind. And you kind of find that by the time maybe someone gets to 40-ish or whatever, they kind of think, oh shit, I should have thought about myself ages ago. Is that a common thing you get?
Yes. But we always say, like, if that's what, like, first things first, it's very easy to put yourself on the shelf. When you've got a big business or you've got a business that's going, that's your priority, that's your baby, isn't it? You want to see that succeed. And I think the beautiful thing is we go so channel and narrow focused into everything that we make those things happen. I think that's the amazing thing of the human belief system. But unfortunately, we can go that so far tunnel vision in something, we forget everything else that's around us. Until something kind of goes, hey, you forgot about this. But I always think of this, like, we can sit and slave for so long into a business and all that sort of stuff, like 2, 3, 4 years. But it's like you can find yourself in quite a bit of an opposition where you can end up with a health scare cropping up, which a lot of people get. You can end up with relationships falling to bits and all that sort of stuff. So I think maybe that could be the priority at that time. But there's still something you could do maybe each week that shows a bit of love and attention to other areas. So
yeah, I think you said it earlier, is that often people wait for the panic to happen or the thing to happen to initiate the change. They don't necessarily think proactively. I've been guilty of it in the past, is that you wait for that oh shit moment before you then actually decide, oh, actually maybe I should do something now. So I guess ideally people would be starting to think about themselves much, much earlier on as they're building a career, as they're kind of building from scratch, rather than leave it 20 years down the line and try and regress everything.
We do a lot of corporate speaking. We go into a lot of businesses and talk about this stuff, but you can only go as far as you can go. So if you're burning out all the time, you've got no energy, and you've got these huge aspirations to build huge businesses and amazing relationships, you're not going to be able to do that if you're running yourself into the floor. You've got no energy. If you've got no energy, your body might fall out of shape. Health goes out of shape. Confidence will go down. So yeah, you can only go as far as what you will allow yourself to go. So
yeah, because I think in my own experience in the sort of corporate world, I found a big change in my own sort of mental sort of happiness when I just said, well, I could work till midnight every night. There's enough work to keep going if I wanted to, but I'm actually just going to switch off at 4:30. I'm going to actually put the laptop in the drawer, locked it, phone away, and that was it. No one could contact me from 4:30 onwards. And that's when, I actually became more productive, because it's right, okay, now I've got till this time to get all this stuff done. So I'm now going to be more productive. But now I've got a complete me time, relaxed time with family or whatever. And, I think creating that separation was really important for me. Perhaps I need to do it in my current job, because I don't switch off at all at the moment. But it's one of them things.
We do something called, so two big things that I always get people to do on this is actually realizing what your stressed version of yourself is. So when you're stressed and you're not creative, what does that look like? So what's actually happening? Are you busy? What's the environment you're in? How does that feel to you? Is there anxiety? Is there overwhelm? What is the stressed version of yourself? And then actually get people to contrast that. So when you're operating at your best, when you're in your most creative, when you're in the most productive in your business, what is the best version of you? And what are the habits you're doing there? And then what we're trying to do is get people to actually contrast that. And then from that, we'll lead people into something called an energy. Have you seen the energy quadrants?
Not seen that, no.
Of how the patterns go? So if you can think of a quadrant, you've got highest performance version of yourself, which is where we want to be all of the time, isn't it? We always want to be performing at our best, moving everything forwards, growing in relationships, learning books, X, Y, Z. And then we've got a state of survival. So survival is kind of when things get too much. So you've been performing too high for too long. Suddenly things start to get on top of you. It starts to get a little bit anxious. You start to get a little bit overwhelmed. The email boxes are starting to go nuts. The phone won't shut up. And then you hit burnout. So burnout's obviously not a good place to be. Netflix, tub of ice cream, crying into your shoes. Who knows what happens when people go down into that place?
Have you been in my house?
No. but a lot of the time, that's only 3 of the quadrant. A lot of the time, I find people do this pattern. So they're going between high performance, survival, high performance, survival, high performance, survival, burnout. And then it's 10 times harder to go from burnout back up to high survival to then repeat that pattern. So you're just ending up in this really poor cycle. Whereas if we can get a lot of people to go, right, these are my high performance habits, maybe all it is renewal. So the 4th quadrant is renewal. So is that a case where then someone can go from performing high, but having a positive form of disconnect, where it's like meditating, journaling, going for a walk in the park, spending times with the children. So it's finding what each individual has as a renewable outlet and implementing that into their lives. So then we can, instead of taking that high performance survival burnout approach, they're going from high performance to renewal constantly. And we always find if we can get people into that state, we can keep them as the priority a lot more, and everything else starts to move at a much faster rate as well.
Sounds interesting. And that kind of leads me on to like another point, which is around about sort of stress. So stress in of itself, people often talk about stress as being as a inhibitor for weight loss. Now, actually, that's not exactly entirely true, but there's obviously factors that stress can play in a behavioral point of view and affect weight loss, wellness, and a whole host of other things in life, lack of sleep, focus, motivation, all those sorts of things. So how do you help people deal with those stress factors? And,
Well, this is a fun one, really. I thought I wasn't stressed at one point, and then I got Genova Labs to diagnostic test me, and I came back very, very stressed. So although I didn't feel stressed, my body was actually under quite a lot of stress through like overtraining, doing stupid challenges that we do, and XYZ. So I think first things first is actually defining what that level of stress is.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I didn't really feel it, but I got a cheap test, which was like £20, and found out things weren't necessarily great. So then it made me really go, oh God, I've really got to start putting more time, effort into recovery, renewal strategies here to kind of get this to balance out.
Stress is obviously quite a high thing for a lot of business people or people with busy lives. So how do you go about helping them manage stress levels? Because a lot of the time the job's not going to go away. It's going to be as stressful as it is. How do you get them to try and cope with that?
So coping strategies. Stress is a fun one. So brain acts in 2 different ways. So number one, as soon as something presents itself, the majority of us will jump to emotional brain. So it's an emotional brain where we'll start to get anxious, angry, pissed off, X, Y, Z. And we don't actually take time in that position to then sit back and rationally think and come up with a logical way of doing something. I think Mel Robbins does a lot of work on this, and phenomenal work. And I think it's just taking time to get out of your own head and into the actual human part of it, where the email comes in, the situation happens, or whatever it is comes in, and it annoys you or it stresses you, or you hit that point of stress, and actually just disconnect, take 5 seconds, 10 minutes away, think about it logically, and then go around it from that aspect. Because I think it's the majority of stress is when we get stuck in that emotional way of thinking. That's when it prolongs itself, because we just think more. We think of the worst situations. We think of what's going to happen instead of actually just sitting back and going, do you know what? This isn't actually that bad. Tomorrow I can pick up a book and do this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think first thing first is like, what is the perception of that stress is a big thing. And then depending on how you perceive the stress will probably, like you just said, it's just a case of switching off and going, do you know what? I can come back to that tomorrow. And then putting yourself back into those places of positive renewal, I guess.
And do you think that particularly maybe people with busy jobs and things like that, maybe they don't plan necessarily enough? So for example, like I used to, when I was in my corporate job, and still now, I used to have like read a lot of books. So, like The One Thing, 12-week deal, those sorts of things. Let's say you say, well, actually, I'm not even going to look at my email until this time of day. Whereas I think people I used to be around, email come from here, then that distract them, that email would piss them off. Now they go over here and talk to that, and then they feel like they've got nothing done because there's no structure. Do you think that's maybe they're causing their own stress by not having that structure?
Yeah, I think this can be a big one as well. Again, it's prioritization, hierarchy of prioritizing yourself, isn't it? Do you know how monks live? Like the monk philosophy. So what monks do is they basically, first thing in the morning, they get up and it's all about self. So it's all about, I'm going to plan in the things that move me forwards, that help me, which relax me, which set me up perfectly for the day ahead. And then say from like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 12, what they do is they then start to open themselves up to the world. Because one of the biggest things that they noticed was when they're constantly in service, they're never in a position to actually take back in. And again, going back to what you said, I think that's a huge thing, is we're very good to plan. We're very good to diarize everything for everyone else, but not for ourselves. And as well in the business world, in the corporate world, what's the key thing that they all say? Oh, if it's not in the diary, it doesn't happen. It's like, yeah, you don't happen in your own diary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, so I think something important for me, and what I try and get my clients to do as well, is a bit of a routine in the morning if they can. Certainly, it's one thing that I certainly do. I think whether it's just happened by nature, but I've pretty much before 9 o'clock, I don't really do any work specifically. I go to the gym. I have a nice hour walk to the gym and back, where I kind of just, that's my own thinking time, where maybe I have some ideas and things, but I'm just setting myself up for the day. And it's only when I come back home and get a coffee, switch the laptop on, and now we go at 9 o'clock. And even then I have a conscious decision to say, well, I'm at my most creative first thing in the morning, so I'm still not going to look at emails. I'm going to do something that's creative at 9 a.m., not necessarily at 9 p.m. when I'm not feeling so creative. Yeah.
I think that's as well, like the fortunate position that we're in, because obviously if you're in control and you're able to do that, then it's very easy to put yourself within your own diary, isn't it? I think that's the big thing that we've got. I think as well, I've always found with what I was saying before, if people can get in and do the little things for themselves, like they might not have 3-4 hours when you wake up, and they probably don't want to get up at 3 a.m. If you can go to the gym or just do a home workout for 15-20 minutes, then that could be all it takes for yourself in order to kind of be in your own thoughts, move, breathe, and then obviously get yourself into a position where you can go and attack the day. So I think everyone's got kind of something what they can do. The biggest shift in my own life was when I started doing the same thing, where it was nobody gets my attention until 10 a.m. It's all me. It's selfish, but that's just how I work. I operate best, because as soon as I open up an email or something like that, I can find it very easy to kind of like sway my priority list.
Definitely. I think, especially depending on what that email may say, and then it affects how you think about the rest of the day as well, if it pees you off or whatever.
Totally cool.
Okay, so kind of one sort of like final question for you is, what do you see as the biggest hurdle for, say, busy professional people, career-driven people that trying to lead that healthier life? And kind of, if there's that one thing that's usually the thing that you see most often, what's one piece of advice for them to try and overcome it?
Honestly, this is going to be like direct but broad. Themselves. We're always in our own way, and we always get into our own way. I still do this. I think everyone still does this. I think people who preach about not doing it probably still do this. But it's very easy to get caught up in like life and what's going on and all that sort of stuff. But the more self-aware you are of what's going on with you, around you, the more connected you are to the way that you think and the way that you feel, you're in a much better position to change, to grow, and to kind of find out the routine that works best for you. So my honest advice to anyone, the biggest tip that we usually give, which goes down an absolute storm, is just become more self-aware. It might just take 10 minutes a day, going on what's actually going on in your head, being aware of like symptoms, is there any inflammation or anything like that, and then just kind of becoming aware of that, and then putting little things in for the day, the week, or little things like that you can do to remedy, look after yourself and stuff like that. So raise your level of awareness to change everything else, I'd probably say.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Cool. Well, super interesting. And so great to kind of hear about the work that you do and kind of all the stuff you're doing. And, sounds like there's some big changes going on as well. So people need to stay tuned for that. If people want to get in touch with you or kind of get on board so they kind of figure out what those things are as they come, how should they get in contact with you best?
I'd give the website, but it's all about to change. But if you just follow me personally on anything that's basically Simon Hall or Simon Hall BC, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the works. I'll be on there, connect with everyone. Happy to reach out and chat if anyone needs that.
Only after 10 a.m. though.
Oh yeah. we don't put that out there though.
Okay, no worries. All right, thank you very much, Simon. It's super interesting to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming on the show. I'm sure everyone got loads out of it and some good information they can put into their lives on a practical level. So much appreciated. Thanks for coming.
I appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
No worries. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. If you did, leaving a review on iTunes would be awesome. And if you're listening on Spotify, hit that green heart to show you favorited the show. If you want to come and visit me on social media, the place I hang out the most is Instagram, where my username is iron_paradise_fitness. Feel free to come say hi. It's always nice to talk to the listeners of the show. And I'd also love to hear what questions and topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes. So stop by and let me know how I can help. But for now, I'll just say thanks for listening, keep living the lean life, and I'll speak to you on the next episode.